Tennessee This Week from WATE's 6 on Your Side starts now.
Coming up on Tennessee This Week, we meet another candidate for governor, Bill Lee, his message to Republican voters. And speaking of the gubernatorial hopefuls, after 2 Republican debates, the third canceled. We're going to talk about what this really means for the race. And President Donald Trump meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin right now on Tennessee This Week. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Tennessee This Week. I'm Kristen Farley. We have been helping you meet the candidates as you cast your ballots, with early voting already underway and Election Day less than 2 weeks out. Well, recently, I had the chance to sit down with Republican candidate for governor Bill Lee, getting his take on the issues and his response to how this race is being run. All right, Bill Lee, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you. Appreciate you having me on.
Glad to have you here. Let's talk a little bit about it. You had a big endorsement this past week. Former Congressman Zach Wamp putting his name behind you, his family behind you. How should voters take that? What does that mean to you?
Yeah, really grateful for that. It was a great day for us. Zach Wamp has certainly been a statesman, long-time congressional representative in this state, a strong voice, a strong conservative voice in this state, and has represented Tennesseans for many, many years. And I'm delighted, very grateful, and very honored to have that kind of a conservative statesman support our campaign.
Let's talk a little bit about the campaign right now. We are seeing a lot of negative ads out there in the governor's race. Yeah. And you have been very vocal saying that you were not going there and taking it as far as saying this is what's wrong with politics and this is not what leaders do. What do you say to people who say those ads are a little bit maybe passive aggressive and that you're maybe kind of taking a shot still in there at your opponents right now?
Yeah, you know, it's not really who I am to call out my opponents or to talk negatively about other people. It really isn't who I am, and I don't think it's what leaders do, and so we've made a decision not to do it. I want to just talk about, and I think Tennesseans want to hear about what the next governor has in mind for the state, how to lift the state up, how to lead, how to make Tennessee a leader in the nation, and to talk about things like good schools for our kids and safe neighborhoods and job growth in the places that we need it. Those are the things that I'm talking about, and those are things that I will lead on as governor. You
are very open about saying you're a conservative outsider. You bring religion into your campaign as well. How important is that to you?
I think being an outsider is really important. I think that I'm the only person in this race who has never run for office or worked for the government, and it's a strength. It allows you to come in without relationships that make you beholden to someone other than those that you serve. I think government exists to serve the people and not the people in government. So I believe being an outsider is really important. I think Tennesseans want an outsider. They want a conservative outsider, and I'm the only one in the race that brings both.
Let's talk about faith. There's a lot of politicians that would steer clear of faith in their campaign. You're not.
No, I mean, my faith and my relationship with Christ is the most important thing in my life, and that'll never change. I think that how that affects who I am and why I'm running is, you know, I actually ran an ad that said that Jesus said that the greatest commandment is to love the Lord, but the second one is like it, to love your neighbor. That means we're called to serve. And, you know, I had a real tragedy in my life that God used to give me a perspective that my life, the highest call for my life is to serve. And that's been a part of the real driver for me running for office, is to serve the people of Tennessee.
Let's talk about assuming that you would win in November. Mm-hmm. What is the first thing that you want to bring to the legislature? What would you like to see lawmakers tackle first? We have so many huge issues in front of us right now.
Well, I've said that as we travel the state, people want a good job and a good school for their kid in a safe neighborhood. Those are all three really interconnected. You know, I run a company of 1,200 employees. Most of them are skilled tradespeople. I'm actually a master plumber myself. Plumbers, pipe fitters, welders, electricians, those are the people I work with every day. You know, we have ignored vocational and technical and agricultural education in our public school system for decades. And companies like mine know that well. We were picked by the Tennessean last year as the best company to work for in Nashville. but we can't fill the job openings we have in skilled trades because we don't have a skilled workforce. One of the very first things I would do is create a focus in the Department of Education to bring a greater emphasis on vocational, technical, and agricultural education.
There's been some progress with some of the community colleges here in Tennessee about that. Let's talk about our educational system here in Tennessee and things like TN Ready. That has just been something that parents and teachers and students are so frustrated about. How would you change that?
You know, as a business person, I know that you can't improve what you don't measure. But if you measure the wrong thing or you measure too much too often, then you actually have a negative impact on your business. Same is true with education. 70% of the teachers in our state say that our testing environment is not beneficial to their ability to teach. And teachers, we have to support teachers. They're the ones that change it. We test too much. We really need to look hard at a reset on how it is that we test so that we can create an environment where our teachers can thrive.
How do you evaluate teachers in a way that is consistent across the board, especially if we reduce testing?
Yeah, I think you do it by driving incentives. You incentivize behavior by, and we know that in business, and when you incentivize behavior, then you get outcomes that you want. And if in our evaluations we're doing things that teachers believe, as if they're part of the process of creating the evaluations and they have buy-in to that process along with parents and local leaders, we can create a system that they believe is the right way to evaluate themselves. And I think that's how we have to do it.
You're talking a lot about supporting teachers. You know, one of the issues that has come up over the last year regarding teachers has been, do we arm teachers in light of all of the mass shootings recently? How do you feel about that?
I feel like the mass shootings are heartbreaking, and it breaks all of our hearts to see that. So our number one concern is to protect our children. We protect courthouses, banks, governors with firearms, but we leave our kids in gun-free zones, and that doesn't make sense. So we got to do whatever it takes to protect our kids, whether it's school resource officers, retired military, or a teacher that's willing, vetted, highly trained, wants to be a part of the solution of protecting our kids. I think we do whatever it takes to protect our children.
So arming teachers is not off the table, something that you would definitely consider.
Absolutely.
And what about the mental health aspect of all of this as well? There's been so much talk about improving or providing more funding for more counselors in our schools. Do you think that is part of the solution as well?
I think we clearly have to look behind the gun at what is happening there, and that is when you look at mental health and the challenges in mental health, and addressing that in a comprehensive way is something that we have to look at much more rigorously in this state. And I think we can actually, you know, I'm a conservative, so I don't think government has the answer for everything. I think we can engage our private sector and our nonprofit community in a greater way to address some of the mental health challenges we have.
Let's talk about health real quickly here. Would you try again on Insure Tennessee or some other form of Medicaid expansion here in the state?
You know, I wouldn't. Obamacare's failed, and expanding Medicaid under the current scenario would just be irresponsible, I believe. We have a fundamentally flawed healthcare system that doesn't address lowering cost. That's where we have to go first. We have to realize that we have a system where you walk in and to get some sort of medical care, and you don't really know what it costs. You don't really care what it costs. You're not sure how it's all being paid. The lack of transparency and thus the lack of incentives to lower cost is what I would address first.
Let's talk about immigration real quickly. We had a raid here in East Tennessee at a plant probably just a few months ago. As of the taping of this interview, that company, the owners, have not been charged with anything. Is that a problem?
You know, illegal immigration, we all know, is a problem. It's a problem because our politicians in Washington have failed to address it for a long, long time. We can make that problem worse by instituting policies that make Tennessee an attractive place for illegals, like driver's licenses for illegals, which we've had, we don't now, or in-state tuition or sanctuary city. When we make Tennessee a magnet, then we just make the problem worse. And those are the things that I would stand against, and also encourage our federal lawmakers, politicians in Washington to finally come up with solutions that will address this problem.
But what about the employers who are hiring these people?
Oh, yeah,
Shouldn't they be facing fines as well?
Employers, we have to uphold the law, and we are a nation that is founded on the rule of law, and so we have to carry out the rule of law.
One last question here. A recent poll showed that about 25% of Tennessee voters are undecided. And so many people are saying the message that they are hearing from the top Republican candidates are all the same. What really sets you apart?
You know, I think I'm an executive leader who's very conservative, who understands rural Tennessee because I grew up that way and am in the ag industry. I understand the skilled trades and the importance there of the future of what Tennessee needs. I have a business that works in the inner city and in suburban, so I have a great deal of executive experience for the executive branch of government. But I think the biggest thing that sets me apart is that I come from outside government and that I bring fresh approaches to the government system. When people are in government for a long time, they acquire power and influence at the expense of those of us that they serve. I think our founders knew that. That's why they created a concept of a government of the people. And the way we retain the original intent of that concept is to have people from outside government bring fresh solutions, nonprofit passion, private sector approaches to the greatest challenges in our communities. And I am that only outsider coming into the system that's a conservative outsider, the only one in the race.
All right, Bill, we appreciate your time.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Okay, everyone, our panel of pundits coming your way next. Stay with us. You're watching Tennessee This Week on WATE 6 on your side. All right, welcome back to Tennessee This Week, everyone. It is time to hear from our panel of pundits today. And joining us now, we have WATE 6 on your side political contributor Courtney Piper and our political analyst George Corda. Good to see both of you today.
Thank you very much.
Let's just go ahead and begin. What was your take on Bill Lee? Was there anything there that surprised you?
My takeaway from your interview with Bill Lee is that he's a conservative, and he's very conservative. I think the number of times that he mentioned he was conservative, we could have turned that into a drinking game. It's clear that he's trying to position himself as a different kind of candidate than Randy Boyd, Diane Black, or Beth Harwell. And with his candidacy too, especially over the last couple of weeks, I've gotten that same sort of political spidey sense that I got during our Spangler-Trammell sheriff's race in Knox County. He seems to be surging a little bit because he's not sort of following the wave of the other candidates and going negative and kind of taking that traditional campaign approach. So he is doing a good job in distinguishing himself, but I don't know if it's too little, too late.
George, do you think he's doing enough to set himself apart? And do you think that's the right strategy?
Well, he's doing all he can to set himself apart. If he got into a bidding war, or a spending war, rather, on how much bad stuff he could say about all the other candidates, then he's just one of a bunch of candidates saying bad things about each other. And it gets lost in the noise.
But in his ad where he talks about how he is not going to go negative, he kind of is a little passive aggressive there, some people might say, by saying real leaders wouldn't do this. So he's still pointing them out. He's reminding
people that, you know, all that nasty stuff that you always say you don't like, but you always vote for people who do it. I'm not doing that nasty stuff. So you should like me more than you like those people who do that for whom you usually vote. So he doesn't have an option, really, apart from getting into the fray. And he's decided not to do that. That, I think, is a reasonably good strategy. Whether people...
But you've said before on this show that negative works.
Negative works when you've got two candidates, and one's being totally positive, and the other's being negative. The positive will usually lose because people are going, why isn't he responding to this? But in this case, you got everybody screaming about everybody, and then you've got all these other races where it's going on. It becomes this overpowering noise. So one guy's saying, I'm not going to do that, has the opportunity to set him apart from being one of the guys that are in there just beating each other to death.
The latest poll that we looked at real quickly saw Bill Lee 5 points behind Randy Boyd, 6 points behind Black, with nearly a quarter of the likely GOP voters undecided at this point. Could Lee make up that margin realistically?
Yes, because he has made up an extraordinarily huge margin since he got into the race. I remember when he first got into the race, we were all like, Bill Lee, okay, whatever. Good job, way to, throw your hat into the civic arena. But those margins and those numbers from the latest polling are actually, they're very serious, and it's indicative of a very serious candidate.
I can see an ad where Bill Lee's sitting there holding up Randy Boyd, Diane Black attack mail pieces and saying, if you're tired of this, and dropping it in the waste can, here's what I'm for, not what I'm against. And that again could propel them.
Again, that's kind of what he's doing.
Yeah, but I mean, do it even more visually without being nasty about it. If this is working, that would work even more.
What about Harwell's baby ad that's out there right now?
Who?
Harwell?
Harwell?
George.
If she finishes higher than 4th, I'll be surprised.
Let's talk about the debate that we had been planning, essentially unraveling this past week. First, it was Randy Boyd. Soon after, Beth Harwell and Diane Black said they didn't want to take part if the others weren't going to. Remember, the plan was for 3 debates, 1 in each of the grand divisions of the state, and we had the other 2. What do you think, George, this turn of events says about where this race stands for governor right now?
First of all, people are more afraid of making a mistake than they are of hitting a home run. Everybody knows what the other guy's going to say. Everybody's pretty sure they know what the other person's going to say. So what they're going to do is stand up there and take beating from their opponents about various things. Plus, you have the issue where, for example, people I really respect in politics who really like Randy Boyd, who really think he would be a good governor, say he hasn't done very well in some of these past debates. So that was interesting to me that he got out first. Well, Diane Black and Bill Lee aren't going to be on a stage talking about each other while Randy Boyd's out here shaking hands and running TV ads. So they pull out, and I think if I were Bill Lee, I'd have shown up.
Bill Lee has, as the time of this recording, said that he will still be at Pellissippi
And
Sunday
he'll
night.
get more publicity off of that than he would by putting out an attack ad on Randy Boyd or
even participating in the debate
Correct.
as planned.
Yeah, right.
What do you think about Randy Boyd has kind of talked in circles since this happened, at first saying it was a scheduling issue, then going on and saying, well, we've been looking at this for some time and it's better to be out there because 50% of the vote will already be in. So he's contradicting himself even in his own statement.
Once you decide on a message, stay on it. And if you don't want to do the debate, say, I have decided I'm going to spend my time campaigning here. I'm going to be out meeting Tennesseans. I'm going to be out talking to people. Here's where I'm going to be. But most people think debates are a good thing. So when you pull out of one, you need to have a really good reason.
All right, let's talk about all of the negative ads out there. One thing that we noticed last week after Randy Boyd and Diane Black traded negative ads, and after Black took some swipes at Bill Lee along the way as well, Boyd seems to have taken a page out of Black's book, using some of her same criticisms. Now he's going after Lee for giving to the Democratic former Nashville Mayor Megan Barry's campaign and for not backing President Trump in 2016. So we asked Randy Boyd about this tactic. Here was his response.
All of our ads are there to help promote our positive aspects and then to share any contrasts that we have with any of our competitors.
Could you say what kind of the differences were in policy with you and Bill Lee? You were, I guess, kind of trying to highlight.
Yeah, I'm not really sure which ad you're talking about, so I can't say.
I think it was one that recently came out, but I didn't know if you can speak to.
Yeah, not really. Actually, I don't really watch the ads or spend a lot of time with the ads. I'm spending most of my time out talking to voters and out in our communities.
All right. Courtney, does that response, I don't really watch the ads, concern you?
It concerns me for 2 reasons. One, he's the candidate, he's the CEO of this campaign, and any commercial that comes out of his campaign, he should be watching and reviewing. It also concerns me just from a political communications messaging and how he's presenting himself, that he's just not very good on the stump. So clearly he was not expecting that question, and his response was just to say, well, I don't watch him. I don't watch him. So it's concerning from 2 levels. One, you're the CEO of your campaign. All of this material should be going through you. And also that he's not very good when asked direct questions that he's not expecting.
George, what was your response? I saw both of you flinch as that was being aired.
Well, I think if Diane Black or Bill Lee have the money, which they do, that's a commercial in and of itself, right there. It is an unfortunate reality in the tension of a campaign, in the pressure of a campaign, and nobody who hasn't been in one can appreciate it. It doesn't matter whether you're running for city council, governor, senator, president. It is all consuming all the time, and it becomes more, you think it can't get any more intense, and it doubles the next day. So he's under a certain amount of pressure. What he didn't do was say something and stop talking. He kept talking. When asked about the ad, I stand by the ad. But for a candidate, and I confronted a candidate one time on that, who put out something in a campaign I was involved in, who just an absolute flat-out lie. And I confronted him on it. And I said, how can you allow that? And he said, well, I don't even look at the ads. And I said, then you shouldn't be in office at all. And he didn't have anything to say. So that would have been better left unsaid.
I think that interview that WATE just did with Randy Boyd is the prime reason why he pulled out of the debate, because he's not doing himself any favors when he speaks on camera in sort of live situations now. He's only doing himself harm, and I think that is the primary example why he pulled out.
We're going to leave that there. Still to come, everyone. President Donald Trump shaking things up again as he goes one-on-one with Russia's Vladimir Putin, then offers a mixed message to the world. Stay with us, everyone. You're watching Tennessee This Week on WATE 6 on your side. All right, everyone, welcome back to Tennessee This Week. The conversation continuing right now with Courtney Piper and George Korda. We want to talk about some international news. President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin meeting in Helsinki. Now, we don't know exactly what they talked about in private. We know that President Trump has wanted to mend fences with Russia. He later called it better than his meeting with NATO. But the headline-making moment came in a joint news conference. The president cast doubt on U.S. intelligence about Russian interference with the 2016 election, a statement he had to walk back on once he got home. So what are we supposed to make, George, of this back and forth that we watched this past week?
Well, 3 successive American presidents have made fools of themselves over Vladimir Putin. George W. Bush, with his comment, I looked into his eye and I saw into his soul. And I remember thinking, that's about the dumbest thing I've ever heard a president say. Until Barack Obama was caught on open mic asking the Russian leadership, including Vladimir Putin, for an election year favor. You guys give me some space, I'll have more flexibility after the election. But a couple of months later, Obama ridiculed Mitt Romney in a debate for warning about Russia. And his administration ridiculed Romney. What I was wondering is, at the time, who's looking to see what decisions Obama's making about Russia? What is he doing or not doing about Russia while he's asking them for a favor? And the other problem with that is that it was after the election Putin started to get aggressive. And so what message did he get, Putin, from the American president saying, hey guys, do me a favor? And then Trump, he hates the people that are after him so much that he gets up and here's this ex-KGB agent, Tsar Vladimir I, and he's bashing U.S. intelligence. Now look, Americans bash U.S. intelligence all the time. The left has been wanting to gut the CIA for decades, but now they got a common enemy. So now that how dare he challenge the intelligence agencies? Look, this is all politics. Trump, if he just keep his ego from getting in his own way, with the economy doing what it's doing, he'd be doing great. But he can't stop talking. He hates people who are after him more than his common sense tells him to close his mouth.
Courtney, what did you think as you watched this unfold?
There could be another explanation. I watched parts of the press conference, and I also watched body language. I watched Donald Trump. I watched Tsar Vladimir I. And it was interesting to watch Vladimir Putin because in his very KGB stoic way, he sort of had this smirk on his face like, I've got the American president wrapped around my little finger. The things that President Trump said during that conference were mind-blowing and unbelievable. He was just sort of advancing the Russian agenda right there in front of everybody to see. And then he comes back to the United States, and I'm sure his key advisors had a sit-down moment with him of what do you bleeping think you were doing over there? And he had to walk back some of his statements. So the explanation is either is like George laid out, his ego is too big for his own good, or there is something here. Vladimir Putin has something on Donald Trump, and the American public needs to know which one of those two things it is.
I don't think that's true for a second. I think Trump wants to get the people who are getting him. If anybody had something on anybody, it was Putin having something on Obama with his request, please, you guys lay off me while I'm running for re-election. That was just nonsensical. But the point is, Donald Trump keeps creating his own firestorms. I looked at a Gallup poll. Russia doesn't even register on the concerns of Americans, but he's keeping it alive.
All right, we need to leave that there. Everyone, we mentioned that Republican debate that we had been planning has been canceled, but the Democrats are still on for tonight. We're going to bring it to you live from 8 until 9 o'clock. Carl Dean and Craig Fitzhugh right here on WATE 6 on your side. Again, everyone, if you'd like to watch this show, you can find it on our website, WATE.com. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.
The views of guests and panelists of this program are their own and not necessarily those of WATE 6 on your side or Nexstar Broadcasting Incorporated.